We need to protect what we've built before we get married. It's just business, Liv. Nothing personal. I remember staring at that prenup across the polished mahogany desk in his attorney's office, my stomach twisting into knots. Robert's hand rested on my shoulder, reassuring, warm, convincing. He'd leaned down and whispered, "This protects us both, sweetheart. I've seen too many colleagues get torn apart in divorces. But that won't be us. We're forever." 8 years ago. 8 years before he changed the locks while I was at my mother's funeral. The text came 3 hours after they lowered Mom's casket into the ground. "Don't bother coming home. Your things are in storage unit number 347 at Safekeep on Donna Road. The code is 5924. The divorce papers are inside." I almost drove my car off Westlake Bridge reading those words. My hands trembled so badly, I pulled over, horns blaring as cars swerved around me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The phone fell between my feet as I doubled over, gasping for air, my black funeral dress suddenly feeling like it was strangling me. Now I'm sitting in my rented studio apartment in Beechwood, a forgotten suburb 40 minutes from the 6-bedroom lakefront mansion where I'd lived since our wedding day. The apartment smells like someone else's cooking and desperation. The divorce settlement gave me $18,000, not even enough for first and last month's rent plus security deposit on a decent place, and my old Honda that Robert kept threatening to replace with something worthy of being in our driveway. I'm glad he never did. It's the only thing I have left that's actually mine. My lawyer, some guy fresh out of law school that I could barely afford, told me there was nothing he could do. The prenup was airtight. Robert had his attorneys update it twice over our marriage, each time with some excuse about protecting us both. I signed everything he put in front of me. After all, we were partners. We were in love. What a joke. According to the court, I'm not entitled to a penny of Hancock Investments, the company that grew from a modest firm to a $40 million enterprise during our marriage. The company I worked for as an unpaid consultant because Robert said it would be better for tax purposes if I wasn't on the official payroll. The company where I organized every client event, every holiday party, every charity fundraiser that built Robert's sterling reputation in Hamilton County. My phone buzzes. It's Trisha, my former neighbor. "How are you holding up, honey?" "I'm fine," I lie, staring at the water stain on my ceiling. "Listen, something weird happened," she says, her voice dropping. "I was at Fleming's last night with Dave, and I saw Robert there with Cynthia Mattingly."
Cynthia.
His 28-year-old executive assistant. Of course. They seemed close. Trisha continues uncomfortably. "I'm sorry. I thought you should know." After I hang up, I throw my phone against the wall so hard the screen shatters. A spider web of cracks spreads across the surface, distorting the family photo I'd kept as my background. Mom, Dad, and me at the lake house the summer before Dad's heart attack. I slide down onto the floor and sob until my throat burns. Not because he's with someone else, I suspected that for months, but because I finally understand. This was planned. All of it. The timing of my mother's cancer diagnosis gave him the perfect opportunity to execute his exit strategy, while I was emotionally devastated and distracted. Mom had never fully warmed to Robert. "He's very charming," she'd said once, her tone making it clear that wasn't entirely a compliment. "Just make sure you know who you are, Livy. Don't get lost in his world." I hadn't listened. That night, I can't sleep. I open my laptop and stare at our wedding photos, still saved in a folder labeled Best Day. Robert's smile looks different to me now, calculated, smug. I start clicking through years of photos, searching for clues I missed. In one from last year's company Christmas party, I notice Cynthia in the background, watching Robert while he has his arm around me. I click over to Facebook and search her name. Her profile is mostly private, but I can see a photo from 3 months ago, a close-up of a woman's hand with a massive diamond ring. The caption reads only, "Finally said yes to my dream." The timestamp, 2 weeks before my mother entered hospice. I slam my laptop closed and pace my tiny apartment. 8 years of my life.
Gone.
And I have nothing to show for it except a closet full of designer clothes that no longer fit my new reality. I need a job.
Fast.
But what skills do I have? I gave up my marketing career to support Robert's business. My resume has an 8-year gap that reads homemaker and volunteer work. In the morning, I force myself to shower. As the water runs over me, an idea forms. Robert might have taken everything from me, but I still have one thing: knowledge. I know how Hancock Investments operates from the inside. I know their clients, their procedures, their weaknesses. I remember conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. Late-night phone calls Robert thought I was sleeping through. Paperwork I helped organize that never seemed quite right. The offshore accounts he mentioned once, thinking I wouldn't understand what they were for. I dress in my nicest remaining clothes, a simple black dress, and the one pair of heels I couldn't bear to leave behind, and drive to the public library. The librarian helps me find the business and legal section. I spend hours researching securities fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The patterns I find match what I'd observed at Hancock Investments: the mysterious wire transfers, the offshore entities with generic names, the way certain high-value clients received special handling that never appeared in the regular bookkeeping. One phrase from a legal textbook jumps out at me: willful blindness is not a defense. The courts don't accept "I didn't know" as an excuse when the evidence suggests you deliberately avoided learning the truth. My next stop is the office of Thomas Reeves. Getting an appointment wasn't easy, but I was persistent. Thomas was Robert's first business partner before they had a falling out 5 years ago. Robert bought him out for pennies on the dollar after threatening to sue him for breach of contract. I never heard Thomas's side of the story. At the time, Robert had painted Thomas as incompetent, risk-averse, a deadweight on the company's potential. He doesn't have the stomach for what it takes to succeed, Robert had told me over dinner the night after the buyout was finalized. His receptionist eyes me suspiciously when I arrive. "Mr. Reeves is very busy. You have 15 minutes. Thomas looks older than I remember, more gray hair, deeper lines around his eyes. He stands when I enter his modest office. "Olivia, this is unexpected." "I need your help," I say, sitting down across from him. He raises an eyebrow. "I heard about the divorce. Robert moves fast when he wants something, doesn't he? Did you know he was planning this?" Thomas sighs. "Not specifically, but it fits his pattern. Use people until they're no longer useful, then discard them." He turns a photo face down, a younger Thomas with Robert at what looks like their first office opening. "I warned you at your engagement party. I pulled you aside and told you to be careful." He had. I'd forgotten that moment, his grip on my elbow, his voice low as he'd said, "Make sure you have your own safety net." I dismissed it as jealousy. "I thought you were just bitter about business disagreements," I admit. "It was never about business," Thomas says. "It was about ethics." Lines I wouldn't cross that Robert stepped over without hesitation. He studies me. "What kind of help are you looking for exactly?" I lean forward. "I think Robert's been breaking the law. Serious financial crimes. And I think that's why he pushed you out, because you wouldn't go along with it." Thomas's expression doesn't change, but his knuckles whiten as he grips his armrest. "That's a serious accusation." "I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to understand." I pull out a notebook where I've jotted down dates, account numbers, and client names I remember. "Do any of these look familiar to you?" He glances at my notes, then quickly stands and walks to his door, closing it firmly. When he returns, his voice is low. "Olivia, if even half of what you're suggesting is true, we're talking about federal crimes. Securities fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion." "I know. And you want to do what exactly?" I meet his eyes steadily. "I want justice." The word hangs in the air between us. Not revenge. Not money. Justice. Thomas stares at me for a long moment, then reaches for his phone. "Janet, cancel my afternoon meetings. And get Frank Westbrook from the SEC on the line. Tell him it's about Hancock Investments. And that we have a whistleblower." 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in a federal building downtown, surrounded by serious men and women in dark suits. I've been here 4 times already, each session longer and more detailed than the last. Today, they have new questions. Mrs. Hancock, the lead investigator, begins. Miss Parker, I correct. I've gone back to my maiden name. He nods. Miss Parker, we've corroborated much of what you've told us, but we need more concrete evidence. Does your husband, excuse me, ex-husband, keep any financial records at home? I think about Robert's home office, with its built-in safe hidden behind the painting of his grandfather. The safe I watched him open countless times, never bothering to conceal the combination from me because he assumed I wouldn't understand or care about what was inside. Yes, I say quietly, but I no longer have access to the house. The female agent next to him leans forward. That's a problem. Without hard evidence, this case becomes much more difficult to pursue. What if I could get back in? The words leave my mouth before I fully think them through. They exchange glances. We can't authorize any illegal entry, the woman says carefully. That would compromise the entire investigation. Of course not, I say quickly. But what if I have a legal reason to be there? Later that day, I visit my new lawyer. Not the inexperienced kid from before, but a sharp-eyed divorce attorney Thomas recommended. Catherine Zhao has the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Thomas speaks highly of you, she says. He rarely does that. He's been very supportive. Robert Hancock has hurt a lot of people, she says. I've faced him in court twice before. Both times, he brought a team of attorneys who tried to bury me in paperwork. Both times I won. She's expensive, but Thomas is covering the cost. You need to file a motion claiming he concealed assets during the divorce proceedings, she explains. We'll request a temporary order allowing you to retrieve personal property still at the residence. Will that work? She smiles thinly. Leave that to me. While waiting for the court date, I do something I've been putting off. I call my old friend Megan, who works in private banking. We haven't spoken much since I married Robert. He always found reasons to cancel our plans.
Leave.
Oh my God. I've been so worried. I heard about everything from Trisha. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner, I say, fighting back tears at the genuine concern in her voice. Don't you dare apologize. That bastard isolated you from everyone who cared about you. Classic abuser tactic. I've never thought of Robert as abusive.
Controlling, yes.
Manipulative, definitely. But hearing Megan put it so bluntly makes something click into place. I need a favor, Meg. It's complicated and possibly risky for your career.
I'm listening.
2 days later, Megan sends me an encrypted file with suspicious transaction records from Hancock Investments accounts at her bank. This is technically confidential, her message reads, but given the circumstances and the patterns I'm seeing, I've also forwarded this to our fraud department. They'll be contacting authorities independently. The court grants my motion. I'm allowed 4 hours in the house to collect personal belongings of sentimental value, with a court officer present. Robert's lawyer argues against it, but the judge is unmoved. Mr. Hancock should have nothing to worry about if everything was properly disclosed during discovery, the judge notes dryly. The day arrives. I've lost weight since I moved out. My clothes hang loose on my frame. I choose a demure navy dress and flat shoes. I pull my hair back in a simple ponytail and wear minimal makeup. I want to look respectable, harmless. Robert isn't home when I arrive, just as I'd hoped. His new attorney and the court officer escort me inside. The house smells different. Cynthia's perfume lingers in the air, sweet and cloying. I'll need to go through my jewelry first, I tell them, heading for the master bedroom. Mrs. Hancock only has 4 hours total, the attorney reminds me coldly. I understand. Upstairs, everything is changed. The bedding, the artwork, the arrangement of furniture, all different. Cynthia has wasted no time erasing me from the space. I open the walk-in closet to find her clothes where mine once hung. I force myself to breathe normally. My jewelry box should be on the dresser, I say, but it's not there. The attorney sighs impatiently. Perhaps Mr. Hancock relocated it. Maybe in his office, I suggest. He's sometimes moved my things without telling me. The court officer nods. That's reasonable. Let's check there next. Robert's office is largely unchanged. The same leather chair, the same bookshelves filled with business books he's never read. The painting of his grandfather still hangs on the wall. My heart pounds as I search the room, opening drawers and cabinets while pretending to look for my jewelry box. I don't see it here either, I say, my voice deliberately fragile. May I sit down for a moment? This is all very overwhelming. I perch on Robert's chair, positioning myself with a clear view of the painting. The court officer looks at me sympathetically while the attorney checks his watch. I just need a minute, I say, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. Being back here, seeing everything so changed. It's a lot to process. While they're distracted by my apparent emotional breakdown, I glance at the painting, then at the briefcase sitting open on the desk. Folders, a tablet, pens, and a small notebook I recognize immediately. Robert's personal accounts book. He always keeps it with him. I let out a dramatic sob and knock a pen onto the floor. As I bend to retrieve it, I quickly slide the notebook into my purse. Maybe we should try the guest room, I suggest, standing up shakily. Robert sometimes stored things in there. We spend the next 2 hours searching the house. I find my jewelry box in the back of a linen closet and carefully pack away the pieces that were truly mine, gifts from my parents, not from Robert. I collect photo albums, books, and a few small keepsakes, all while the notebook burns a hole in my purse. As we're preparing to leave, I hear the distinctive growl of Robert's Ferrari in the driveway. My heart slams against my ribs. He bursts through the front door, his face flushed with anger when he sees me. What the hell is she doing here? The court officer steps forward, explaining the court order. Robert's attorney tries to calm him, but Robert's eyes are fixed on me with pure hatred. Taking more from me, Olivia? Wasn't it enough that you nearly ruined my reputation by spreading lies about our marriage? I haven't said a word publicly about our divorce, but of course he's creating his own narrative. I stay silent, continuing to pack my photo albums into a box. You'll never get another cent from me, he hisses. You're nothing without me. Nothing. I look up at him then, really look at the man I spent 8 years loving and feel nothing. No pain, no anger, just emptiness. I'm leaving now, I say quietly. You'll never have to see me again. His face twists with confusion. He expected me to fight, to cry, to beg. My calm demeanor throws him off balance. Whatever you're planning, he says, his voice dropping so only I can hear. It won't work. I've covered my tracks. You have nothing. I smile faintly. Goodbye, Robert. That night, I meet with Thomas and the federal agents to turn over the notebook. It's exactly what they needed. Detailed records of offshore accounts, fraudulent transactions, and client funds Robert has been misappropriating for years. This is textbook securities fraud, one agent says, flipping through the pages. Plus tax evasion, wire fraud. He's looking at 15 years minimum. When will you arrest him? I ask. We need to move carefully. Build a solid case first. But soon, the lead investigator promises. Very soon. 2 months pass. I find a job at a small marketing firm run by a woman named Diana who doesn't care about the gap in my resume. The pay is modest, but it's a start. I move to a slightly better apartment and begin rebuilding my life piece by piece. Then, early one morning, my phone rings. It's Thomas. Turn on the news. Channel 8. I fumble for the remote, clicking to the local station just in time to see Robert being let out of Hancock Investments in handcuffs, his face pale with shock as reporters shout questions. The headline scrolls across the bottom of the screen. Prominent financier arrested on fraud charges. The reporter's voice comes through clear and damning. Robert Hancock of Hancock Investments was arrested this morning following a months-long investigation into allegations of securities fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Sources say Hancock allegedly misappropriated millions in client funds through an elaborate scheme involving offshore accounts. My phone buzzes with texts. Trisha, Megan, even old colleagues I haven't spoken to in years. Everyone watching the spectacular fall of the man who seemed untouchable. 1 week later, I receive a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answer. Olivia. Robert's voice is hollow, desperate. You have to help me. They've frozen all the accounts. I can't even make bail. I'm sorry to hear that. I say evenly. This is your doing, isn't it? You and Thomas.
No, Robert.
This is your doing. All of it. A long pause. I treated you well, he says finally. I gave you everything. And then you took it all away. I'll change the divorce settlement, he offers quickly. Half of everything. Just tell them you were mistaken about what you saw. I almost laugh. It's too late for that. The evidence speaks for itself. You bitch, he whispers. You planned this.
No, Robert.
You planned this when you decided I was disposable. I'm just making sure you face the consequences of your choices. I hang up. My hands don't even shake. 6 months later, I sit in the courtroom as Robert pleads guilty to reduced charges in exchange for returning millions to his defrauded clients. He'll serve 7 years in federal prison. His assets, including our former home, will be liquidated to pay restitution. Cynthia is nowhere to be seen. She left him 3 days after his arrest, taking the enormous diamond ring with her. As part of the plea deal, I receive proper compensation for my contributions to the business. Not millions, but enough to restart my life comfortably. Thomas offers me a position at his firm, recognizing what Robert never did, my talent for client relations and event planning. You're too valuable to waste, Thomas tells me. Unlike some people, I know how to appreciate skill when I see it. 1 year to the day after Robert's text telling me not to come home, I close on a small but beautiful house in Oak Ridge, not far from where I grew up. It has a garden out back where I plant tomatoes and basil, and a front porch with a swing where I sit in the evenings with a glass of wine. Tonight, Thomas is coming over to discuss a new client proposal. Our working relationship has been strictly professional, but lately there's been something else there, a warmth, a possibility. I'm not ready yet, but someday I might be. My phone buzzes with a text from Megan. Dinner next week? The girls want to see your new place. I smile as I type back. Absolutely. Tuesday works. I'll make that pasta everyone loves. Setting down my phone, I look around at my home. The furniture I chose, the art I love, the life I'm building. Robert once told me I was nothing without him. He was wrong. I am everything I need to be